Hi, Leon. Here we are again.
Hi, Sonja.
I had such a fun time last time we got together, and I'm sure we're going to have another fun session going forward on this.
I'm starting to look forward to these weekly recordings and the way we do it. I think I agree. It's fun. I'm looking forward.
Yeah, it's fun discussing something that we love doing. And I think that's really where this fun party starts. So
absolutely.
I'm going to leave it to kick off for you to kick off today. Where do you want to kick off?
There's a whole lot of things that I can throw in the pot to start off with, but it might be too much for just for an intro. An interesting perspective I had watching this now, the second episode, which is quite a packed episode. There's quite a lot of themes developing in this one, which will take us, some of them will take us right through, some of them will have a short curve. But some of the themes I've just dotted down, I've dotted down 14. I won't mention all 14 now.
Wow.
But I think the systemic cause of Leila's fear of water gets revealed in this episode. So that's worthwhile spending a bit of time on it. Constellation as a spiritual practice, which raises the question, I think, in the audience, what is a spiritual practice as opposed to what is a religious practice? Is there a difference? And can we as facilitators perhaps say a few words about what we think is the difference between the two? So that's just to start with. Then there's also in this episode the whole issue of a blind presentation. I don't know exactly what you call it, but the person is nominated, but he doesn't declare what he represents in the field. So that's an interesting theme. And then also very interesting for me to notice is how the representatives, even though they're representing something for the client, they also benefit from representing, because what they're experiencing also reflects on something in their lives. So those are kind of some of the themes that just popped in. But there's more later.
Yeah, so this is very, very rich. And so the question is, what is family constellation? What is this work? And why do we do this work? And Zamat says, what we aim to do is expand the origin family. So what does that mean? So in Western therapies, in Western coaching, we work on the individual. And when there is a trauma, most individuals can't remember, even in this body. And where this work goes, it says, what if there is something in you that is from the expanded family, which is from the family system? And there's a consciousness, a collective consciousness in the family system. And that's really what he is talking about. So now, if we look about religious consciousness, or not religious consciousness, spiritual consciousness, religion is very much about what is my path with God. And no matter what religion is, I want to develop a relationship with God. And the spiritual context here is, it expands that. There is something beyond. It is not just about my relationship with God. It is about the collective. It is bigger than me, to start off with. And I love to see this work as my spiritual growth path, because so many of my questions when I was a child get answered in this work. And I will go into some of the questions that are answered as we go along. But so, yes, for me, this has become my spiritual path because of the wisdom in this work. And that is why I also want to highlight the wisdom that comes in the work when we get to the certain points where that is being highlighted. Like, there are no coincidences, which we see when you just mentioned that somebody representing, and the couple that were representing in Layla's constellation, well, the ex-boyfriend and ex-girlfriend, that had a lot of tension between them, how this tension actually became so emerged in this constellation, and how perfect it was for Layla's constellation. Two completely different paths, but the same, but a massive healing for everybody concerned. So, and that is, I think, is understanding that there is something beyond us. And then, as Zamat says, our aim is to get to the bottom of our current problems. So there needs to be a recognition that the problem is not just mine, that there is a problem that is pre my existence, that there is something, that there was a suffering in the world before I came into the world. And that suffering I am now part of because of those people that I owe my life to. So it is not just their suffering that comes through, it is also their strengths. It is also whatever they've experienced and survived. So it's not, we're not just looking at the suffering, but we deal with this work in healing that which causes us not to have a good flow in life and not to be aligned. And I think that's another spiritual concept that we bring out there. I need to be aligned. I need to be aligned in mind, body, and soul. And I remember when I started this work, Bert Hellinger used to call it moving with the soul, moving with the essence of the soul. So there's a lot of questions that we can look around there. But our troubles and some of our painful endless spirals actually are long before us. The good ones as well as the not so good ones. So we shouldn't just forget the strengths that we can be grateful for, that we also have had in our systems so that we can survive. And through all that, be able to get much more in touch with our feelings and our deeper emotions. And I think this is where it really catches us, because in our Western society, we have so learned to disregard our feelings and our emotions, because especially for men, but also for women who are in careers, when you have feelings and emotions, you are considered not to be on top of it. You are considered not to have clear vision. And this is beautiful work of us connecting ourselves back into our body. And this is my perception. I may be wrong, but for me, religion does not connect me back in the body. Yes, I love going to church. I really love the atmosphere, and I feel that deep in my body. But for me, the key is moving back into the body, allowing my body to experience the pain, because only when I experience the pain and I can move through the pain can I grow as a human. So there's a lot of self-growth in this work as well.
So much more to say, of course, about that, because it's a very rich topic. The whole topic about spirituality versus religion. Religion, for me, in essence, is very symbolic. There's certain rituals. They stand for something. The unfortunate thing is that so many churchgoers also have just gone through the motions of the rituals without really feeling and in living the meaning of the rituals. So I think what spirituality in this context that we talk about opens up for us is the capacity in us to really feel what we believe, and also so grow through that. So yeah, maybe another word is ecological intelligence, because it incorporates all the aspects of being human. Maybe we can call it an inner intelligence, InQ rather than an IQ. You know, the inner living of what's going on in my life. And I think this methodology brings us closer to live what we feel inside, and helping it to be expressed. And in the expression, the healing. But I think our episode starts beautifully with this first snapshot of the boat trip from Crete. And in itself, that is also a rich little snap, because it symbolizes another principle in our work, and that is exclusion versus inclusion. And I think it's beautifully said there when she hears, there's no place for you on this boat. So she gets dumped over into the water. So with that very rich symbol, the pain starts that will touch the next generations. And it's very interesting, it's very powerful to realize that happened 3 centuries, 3 generations, 4 generations back, might want to be expressed in this generation.
Yes.
And will need to be included in this generation. So there's no escape from avoiding that principle of a healthy inclusion. So I thought that stood out for me in the beginning.
Absolutely. And then there's the second element, where the goal that she had taken with, the gain that he took for himself, the guy who threw her over, that he kept that. And so in her life pattern, we see she married this very rich man, and then she's got nothing. And so that's the second element that comes in with that story, is that he obviously gained from throwing this woman overboard. But yes, the story starts with her being scared of going into the water, her fear of water, which she can't explain. And then the pattern of where she loses everything because her husband loses everything.
Exactly. So that's quite a serious opening to the episode, but then I can't help but notice also the humorous little bits, you know, where she calls the man sir. I thought that was quite a humorous moment in the series. And then he says to her, no, you don't have to call me sir, you can just call me my name. So it brings these light moments that makes it real fun, you know, to watch.
Absolutely. So, in this episode, we go in and out of the constellation, because we go in, then we see a snippet of something else, then we see something else. So the constellation itself is placed in quite a few different parts of the story. But
little flashbacks and yeah.
Absolutely, yes. So again, I like to go with the instructions that Samad gives in terms of, this is not drama, because I've heard people say, but this is like Gestalt, it is like drama, and it is, and he's very clear on saying, this is not drama. This is serious. This is not psychodrama. This is something that is deeper. And I think when we facilitate, we also, sometimes we have a lot of laughter, and that is part of it. But, and you say the light things that light little snippets that come in is because otherwise it gets very heavy. And the idea is for it not to be heavy, but to be meaningful. And there is meaning in even the little funny things that are said. They are quite meaningful. They're not just fluff, as I would say it. Yeah. And then he gives the instructions for Ada to actually go into the experience. And I think...
Just before that, sorry to interrupt you, she is it Layla? She chooses a man to represent her, which is also quite interesting. She chooses Fico, and he, on the surface, it looks like, no, but how can you choose a man to represent? But then it turns out that Fico is a very seasoned representer, and he immediately gets what is going on. So very interesting. But that she intuitively chooses him to do that.
Yes. And so the thing is, it's not important whether the representative is male or female. What is important is that whatever happens in the body is being expressed. And that is what he did well. And yes, you're right. He is a seasoned representative. But you know what? It doesn't matter whether somebody is seasoned or not. And this is always the most amazing. When Ada then is like, what is going on? She is like, can't believe what is happening within me. And you can see that she's really already angry at having this experience. So her own anger really surfaces through this experience of what she's having in her representation.
Exactly. Yeah, she immediately feels that drowning. She represents the drowning feeling.
Yes.
And then immediately she can't understand what the hell is going on with her, because her rational mind is trying to control everything so beautifully, and yet the irrational, experiential side, shall we call it that, is giving her impulses that she cannot just ignore. They are real in that sense.
Absolutely. And then Toprak is brought in, and no specific representation is given. So, and that I think is really good, because there's no attachment to a representation. It is, let's see where this goes. And I love it when I do this in constellations, because it really opens up for any possibility to come along. And then she is immediately like, no, this can't be true. And then this confrontation between the two of them comes to the fore in the constellation. So the question I've often had from representatives is that me putting my stuff out there? And the answer is yes and no, because it is your anger. I once had a constellation, and this husband came along to see what his wife was doing, and he got all the angry rolls. And then on his way home, he said to his wife, I got all the rolls for the angry men. Am I that angry? It was such an insight for him, because whenever his wife said to him, you know, you're angry, he would deny it. And when he was in the constellation, so it's absolutely perfect. Whatever role and representative is given is absolutely perfect. So yeah.
So even though you're representing for somebody else, your buttons can get pushed in the process.
Absolutely. Yes. And then she gets to push him. And I want to just to reflect on this a little bit, because that again is another situation that I refrain people from doing it. I say, what is it that you want to do? Give me, what is it that you want to do? I want to hit him. So the information is given, but no action follows through. What's your take on that?
I totally agree. I've seen situations where people go so in a deep trance about this that they kind of lose control, and then they do things or behave a certain way that is not really constructive to the progress of the constellation. So in cases, there was one case I remember in my history where the person had to be taken outside of the room and asked to calm down and get ground herself again. But so some representatives, of course, are very sensitive and they can get sucked into a role too deeply. Now, you and I know there are certain techniques how we teach how not to get too deep into the trance. But nevertheless, I agree with you. I think that it's not needed. Just the expression of how you feel in that situation is enough information.
Absolutely. And I want to put a caution in here. There are people who see this type of thing, they have done similar type of works, and they feel that they can be a facilitator of this work, and not knowing all the little safeguards can sometimes get them into trouble. And so that is why our training is a minimum of 2 years, because this is part of the training of giving the safeguards of why we do what we do, allowing people to go into a trance, but also knowing when they go too deep into a trance, not to allow them to go there. And I would say measuring what is happening in the constellation on some level.
Definitely. Would totally agree.
But we can see that Ada is completely out of her world, and she does not like what she's just experienced. So she runs.
So it touches her, but it causes her to go in a deeper denial about it because her rational mind is fighting with this experience.
Yes. And yes, and she's like, no, 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 no. And then Layla is the one who is, again, the funny one. And she says, running away from things just does not work, because Ada has run away and running away from your experiences. And what is key here is Ada is in her normal, this is how I deal with stress. I don't confront it, I move away from it. So that's her typical way of dealing with stress or trauma in that as it was in her case. And many of us do that. We don't want to face the pain. We do the things to fix it. And she's very much also accused by her friends. You always want to fix it, but not your own stuff. Fixing everybody else is fine. And don't we, aren't there many of us, yes, we become facilitators, we become coaches because we want to fix everybody else's problem so that we look and we're in control. And meanwhile, who needs the help? Who needs to confront the issues? We do.
Exactly. There's a beautiful scene in a car as they drive back. I think my sequence is right now, around about minute 14, 15, where Sergei then say to her, what are you angry about, Ada? Maybe these diseases are trying to teach us something. Maybe, and then she follows with, maybe it's something we need to be grateful for. Maybe we should thank cancer. And I think it takes that deep rapport between friends, that trust between friends, when they can actually pose a question to you that wakes you up. Because later in the episode, we also see that Ada is actually thinking about this question. And she in a talk, she reflects, which, I think the power of friendship, the power of truth is so important in our personal process.
Absolutely, absolutely. But yes, so even though she will not confront it, it takes somebody close to you to actually put your nose into it and say, haha, this is what's really going on. And yes, she is thinking, what is this funny thing that's happening in the constellation? So yes, she is thinking about it. And then it moves back into, we see back into the constellation, where it goes, where the actual words are, I don't care much, I am your killer. And how that is quite relevant, again, to their situation. And I don't want to give away the story too much, but where he, because of his actions, is where the whole process between him and Ada, where she feels hurt, she feels she can't reconcile, and he doesn't quite know what's going on. Until right at the end, we can see what is going on. But
it's like
we have an inkling.
A parallel
Yes.
reality that plays out together with what's happening in the constellation field.
And then where Zermatt says to Ada, you have been carrying this pain for years. Would you like to put an end to it now? And it's like, he says it to Ada, but he says it to the representative. But this is such a beautiful question that we can use, because often we get to this where a client in the representative, you can see, is absolutely stuck and wants to be right. And I want to be right. I have my right. I have a right for this. I have a right for that. And I know that my trainer used to say in the constellation, like, do you want to be right or do you want to have peace? So it was like, and that was also that push button. Do you want to be right? But I love this question. Would you like to put an end to it now? And then it is, wow, beautiful. This is such a heavy burden. But the righteousness says, no, I'm not going to do that. You hurt me. And this is how we hold on to the pain. We want to hold on to the pain. We have a right to that pain. And we don't want to let it go. And then eventually, there is this, you can give it back. It's not yours. Give it back to where it belongs. But can you take it back? So there is always the thing is, if I give it, can you take it? And in that give and take exchange, we can't give something that somebody else is not ready to take. And we can't take something that somebody is not ready to give. And this is part of the spiritual understanding that comes through here. The need for balance.
It's very interesting to notice that how the series plays it out and script the flow of events. But as she says, no, I won't do that, and storms out, one of the next scenes then, of course, reveals that her hand is still shaking. And so it's almost like life is such a good teacher. Life will show you that even though you're in denial, there's some stuff that you need to look at. Yeah.
The problem will persist.
Yeah.
And then comes the getting to the new perspective in the constellation. And this is really why we do this work, is getting the new perspective. But what I really also love is the connection through the eyes. And in a constellation, when we do this connection through the eyes, something happens. Often words are not necessary, but there's an exchange of energy that happens in that moment.
Yes, in Sergi's words, the words make me feel so wonderful inside. And she also argues with her in the car and says, nobody asked me how I feel, indicating that what she experienced was changing her experience of the situation inside herself. So it's so important that connection with a trust or a truthful connection with the feeling inside happens. Because once it's done truthfully and authentically, it reveals a new level of perspective.
Yeah, so the thing is, Ada is so stuck in her own problems that she's almost not willing to listen to Layla in a lot of senses. It's Layla giving Ada advice, where they sit on the bed and the three friends talk about their sexual life, and Layla is the one who says, this is what you have to do with your man. And it's almost like Ada is quite irritated when Layla gives her the advice. And this irritation is actually coming through quite a bit, because Layla is the one who is seeing life in a really happy-go-lucky way, and Ada is the one who sees everything and you got to fix it. Layla, you have a problem, you're not looking at it, we need to fix your problem, but not wanting to receive the same from Layla. So, and that is often what happens in our relationships.
Yeah, that period of denial we're going through, you know, the change curve, the shock, denial, and then anger, and then depression. It's beautifully played out in the series as well.
Absolutely. And denying even her shaking hand, which then costs her the opportunity to go to Brussels.
Yeah.
Which gives another reason to be angry.
Perpetuates the anger in yet a new way, yeah.
And yeah, do you want to take it from there?
I think we're about now. Ada has now in the hospital somewhere, but there's a scene that's also very touching, where she looks at the babies, because she realizes this decision to go to Brussels is going to delay yet another while the desire to also have children. And so she looks longingly at these babies, and that's the one scene that plays out. And then the other scene is where Sergei gets fired, which is outside there in the street. He gets a phone call from the legal firm, and the legal firm just announced that she's no longer. And then her anger flashes up. So sometimes there is so I think it's good to distinguish in our conversation here as well between suppressed anger and anger that is actually a holy anger. You know, it flares up and it expresses in a healthy way. That could be good, because it also lifts Sergei's spirit and gives her more confidence in the way forward.
I like the fact that you bring that up, because often people say all anger is bad, but I think anger is a real good emotion, and we need to recognize the good emotion in the anger when it is, you can shove your job. I'm on a different planet right now. My life is different. And that's and because she felt suppressed by her boss, and she felt controlled by the boss, and that feeling of being liberated and no longer having to be in that cage, as it were. So
exactly.
Yeah, so that is really,
so
really good.
As we know, it started off with playing the surrogate for surrogate father or husband for her mother. So that started off in the first episode. And then it perpetuated through her relationship with the boss, because also pleasing the boss all the time, tippy-toeing around them, keep everyone happy. Maybe that's also the turmoil of and causing her physical symptoms of illness. And so it's so important that we also address anger and how anger needs to be dealt with when it comes up in our experience.
Absolutely. And Sergey finds out that that her cancer is in remission, but she gets very, very clear advice that she needs to keep on taking her medication. And that is paramount, because it goes together with Zamat saying in the beginning, this is not a medical treatment. Yes, we have success in feeling better, etc., etc., but I'm not going to replace your medical treatment. And then Sevki decides, I'm feeling so good, and actually does not heed this advice. So, and it's very key to bring it in, why the advice is so important. And as a facilitator, we should not ever override medical advice, because medicine has its place. This methodology does not replace medical treatment, but it can help the body heal. And that's really what it is meant to do.
That there's a healthy relationship between your inner work and science. Let's say it in that way. It needs to be in a fine equilibrium. Our work is not about denying science and a medical fraternity, not at all. We are partners in the same objective, and that is to improve, to heal at all aspects, not only physical, also emotional, every way, the experience of the client, to help support that process. So yes, I totally agree with you there. There's some directions where people start looking at the work as magical, almost like, that they will tell stories to prove that this work is magical. I think that's dangerous ground. We need to keep this in a very healthy equilibrium.
So I think what we really need to stress here is it is our emotions, our mental emotional instability that causes the dis-ease in the body. And when we lift the burdens and we mentally and emotionally become liberated, our body is just going into a phase where the self-healing in the body can occur. So our bodies are designed to self-heal. So if we give our bodies the space for that healing to take place, and that's really all that is happening through this work, it is releasing the pain points that keep the body in that space of disease. It is lifting that pain point, allowing the body the space to heal. And I think that is very important to bring across, because it is not a standalone healing methodology. It is just, let's see what happens when the body feels the release from all the pain, and then can take it from there, because we need to trust that our body is a self-healing regulatory system.
That's a wonderful summary. Yes.
So then we see that Ada and Salam's relationship hits a crisis point, which she never expected, because she now has really decided she wants to get her relationship with her husband going, and he then confronts her with the news that he's had an extramarital incident. And for Ada, this is total betrayal, because that's the one thing that she never wanted to experience again, because that was how she left her relationship with Toprak. So Ada is spinning out of control and into this crisis, which brings us, if we living something over and over again, and the same cycle manifests itself in different ways, is it possible that the cause is from the past? and we're not even aware of it. So this is other questioning now. I'm in the same boat again. What do I do now? Why is it always the same story?
Yeah.
So she's like sucked right back into the past. And when you suck back into that, that's the only thing you can think of. But in this work, we go back to the grandmothers and the grandfathers and even their parents. So I heard something really beautiful this week, that when we bring the past into the present, well, it's in our presence anyway. So when it is in our presence anyway, that is why it shows up in these patterns. It is not about the past. It is about what is present in your current life, which you are not even aware of. And standing in that presence in the constellation, that is really what it is. It is that presence, when we open it, opens the gateway to the future or to a different future.
So one could also from another angle say that it's what Jung said, bringing the unconscious into consciousness.
Yes.
And that's the way to heal what sits there as something that has no potential but to be revealed. And the moment it's revealed, it directionalizes life in a completely new way. And in similar ways, the ancestors represent our subconscious, right? So we bring it into the, as you say, into the present. Yeah, from a consciousness perspective, we are always in present, whether we notice it or not. And it's so good to go through the series and notice how buttons get pushed and then brings us into presence, either through a painful experience, but it brings us to the awareness of the moment. And that painful montage about Ada's past is very indicative, very, very telling of what she has gone through. When she then asked the story, why is it always the same old story? Why is it always the same? So that awareness of the patterns in our life then wakes us up to do something about it.
Absolutely. So in the last episode that we recorded, I spoke about Zamat giving tasks to be completed. And the task he gives Layla is to light candles for the grandmother, to honor her. And he says to her, if you honor her, you will live in abundance and plenty. And as I'm saying it, I'm getting goosebumps all over, because I don't think we ever think about the people we don't know. Because often when I do a constellation and I do a little bit of meditation, bringing in the grandparents, people say, I don't know them. How do I know how to bring them in? I don't know them. And I always say, but they're in you. They are part of you. You are part of them. And it's not in our consciousness to actually do that. But to bring into the consciousness, and that's why I love this homework that he gave her, to bring into our consciousness that we would not have had life if the people before us did not have life. So what is key in this series is the grandmother is the one who passes away or is thrown overboard. So obviously the grandfather made it, and that's where the descendancy is. But right at the end, the money that comes to her is from the grandmother. So If you honor her, you will live in abundance and plenty. And so she's so, Leila's so innocent. I will do everything by the book. So she does it. And I think it's so beautiful. And she does it with such reverence to light the candles and to just honor her grandmother. And I think I want to also focus more on giving honoring tasks for the grandparents that have passed. Obviously, it needs to be related to the story and to the person as it is. But yes, I think just sitting here and having so much negatives about my parents and about my life and about my traumas and all that, and then saying, hang on, my grandparents had traumas, they had bad lives, and yet they aren't part of it. And so for me, it's almost an honor to honor them, because it's almost a way of honoring myself. That's how I feel about it.
Exactly. So as you speak, for me also to add a bit to that, so beautiful that the best way to light a candle for my grandparents is to actually live my life fully in honor of them.
Yes.
And I think we often forget it because we get swamped with our challenges and our problems and whatever, that we don't think in those terms. And yet, when we think of our lives as a candle, as an inspiration to them that made it possible for us to be here, then there's another quality that opens up to our life.
There's a richness to it. There's a purpose to it. There's a meaning to it. So thank you for that. That's beautiful, what you just said. And then there's a repeat of the question. Do you think our health problems, our shattered relationships, our financial or spiritual losses could all be caused by wounds from generations past? I think we are so self-absorbed in our life that we are so, everything happens to me and why me? And I think this question really cuts the why me question. Why not me? And when I think about, are all my problems part of a generational system? And I need to answer with a possible yes. Then I need to say, okay, am I going to be angry about it? Where's that going to give me? Because I'm not solving my wound by getting angry that I was born into that system. The only way through is to accept those wounds, to accept whatever I have to deal with, my traumas, my challenges, whatever, because they are all somewhere where they haven't been looked at, where they haven't been worked through, where they haven't been given attention to. And this is the thing, is we all have an inherent need to belong, to be seen, to be heard, and to be validated. And if we can't even validate the life that we were given by those before us, how can you value my life? And so, starting with acknowledging the wounds that are in me gives value not only to my life, but gives value to the generations that have brought me to this point.
Beautiful. And also it lifts that lid of denial of the current reality. You know, accepting things as they are. I love Byron Katie's way of saying it, loving what is. that just opens up a new possibility. And I think in the Mankind Project, there's such a beautiful ritual where they look at each other when they welcome in a meeting. The welcoming greeting in a meeting is all parts of you are welcome here. So for me, it's just that we come here in the present moment with everything that we are. All our wounds, everything of the past, that's who we are.
And this brings me to, we have such a beautiful, rich word in our country, sawubona. I see you. I see all of you, including your ancestors. And it's such, and being seen with that greeting, I see all of you, is so beautiful. But how often do we really see the person that we sit across? How often do we really see the person we have dinner with? We only see the parts that we want to see. But how about, I want to, and I have become very aware of this, when meeting somebody, seeing all of the parts, not just the parts I want to see. And that means I can embrace you in total, not just the bits and pieces that I like and that suit me. So beautiful. We've gone a little bit deep here.
It's beautiful as this progress. I think towards the end now, Ada aborts an operation. She is kind of forced to resign, and then she makes a decision to pack up and resign and leave her practice, which is quite a dramatic step. So there's a huge shift in Ada in this episode. And then we see her breaking down in tears, and Toprak is back on stage. So all the synchronicities are brought together towards the end of the episode. Beautifully so.
But she asks the question, if we knew how the past affected us, would we still avoid facing it? And this is such a key question for her, because she runs away from the past. She runs away from facing what is not working. And now she's put face to face to it. Or no matter how much we avoid it, would it never stop chasing us? So this is the thing, it's the realization that comes through to her is, I've been running, and it keeps running after me. And so she gets into this moment in the lift where she is in utter despair because she can't get away from it. She now needs to face it. And yes, this, it then ends where she gets a call from her special friend who says, look who's in the background. Can't get away from that either.
And you can just see the expression on her face when she hears that voice of her lover of the past, that it evokes in her a memory of how beautiful it was. So the ambiguity, the pain and the pleasure, the pain and the good memories all play out in our lives from time to time, all playing a role to keep us awake, bring us to healing.
Absolutely. So thank you. Is there anything else you want to share?
I think we've touched on all the themes that I've started with, so no need to repeat them, but it's perhaps a good idea to look at the episodes as they unfold and match the themes in the episodes also with the work that is done in the constellation field. So because that might be also interesting for the viewers. Let's see how it unfolds.
I think I want to invite the viewers to leave their comments, ask questions, and then we can maybe get to those questions at some time. We can do a Q&A on the questions that the viewers leave for us. I think I'd be excited about that. And then, yeah, thank you for being here with me again today, Leon.
Thank you.
It's so positive because we come from such different points of view. And so I really, really appreciate this time with you. Again, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Awesome.
Thank you. Looking forward to our next time. Thank you.
Absolutely.